Who was Sojourner Truth, the woman who spoke truth to power? My answer is simple. She was one of the clearest voices in American history for freedom, dignity, and plain moral truth. But the part most people miss is how unusual her path was. She did not begin as a public icon. She became one by turning a life of bondage, loss, and hard-won independence into speech that people could not easily ignore. Sojourner Truth was born into slavery in New York around 1797 as Isabella Baumfree. That detail matters because it places her inside a system she later challenged. She was not speaking from the outside. She knew what it meant to be owned, separated from family, and treated as property. In simple terms, she understood power from the bottom up. That is why her voice carried such force later. It was not abstract, it was lived. Here is the first key turn. She escaped slavery in 1826, but freedom did not mean safety or ease. She later won a legal case to recover her son, which was extraordinary for a black woman in that era. Then she changed her name to Sojourner Truth in 1843, signaling a new mission. The name itself is the clue. A sojourner is a traveler. Truth was not just a label for her. It was a public assignment. She set out to speak, travel, and persuade. And this is where her story becomes more than biography. She entered the abolitionist and women's rights movements and used direct, memorable language that cut through polite excuses. Her most famous speech, often remembered as "Ain't I a Woman?", challenged the idea that women were fragile, dependent, or less deserving of rights. I think that is why she still matters. She did not argue in a soft academic way. She exposed the gap between what people said about justice and how they actually behaved. And that leads to the deeper answer to the title. Sojourner Truth spoke truth to power because she understood that power often hides behind custom, religion, and habit. She confronted slavery, racism, and sexism at the same time. That combination is important. If you separate those struggles too neatly, you miss her real strength. She showed that injustice is often layered, and so the response has to be clear, disciplined, and fearless. There is also a limit worth noticing. She was not a politician with formal office, and she did not win every battle in her lifetime. But that is exactly why her example is so durable. She proved that influence does not always come from institutions. Sometimes it comes from moral clarity, repeated often enough that people are forced to listen. So, who was Sojourner Truth? She was a formerly enslaved woman who became a public witness against injustice, a speaker who made complicated issues sound unmistakably human, and a figure whose power came from telling the truth when silence would have been easier. That is the real answer. Not just that she was famous,